um, we're going to get started then on our next talk in just a second. So I want to welcome and get y'all ready for a talk by Frank Campo from Southeastern Louisiana University. And I really like the beginning of this title, TA's Rock. So I can't wait to hear a little bit more about that. So go ahead and take it away. We're not seeing your screen yet, so let us know if
Yeah,
you're having
I
some
didn't have the option yet, so let's see if it works.
trouble.
How is that?
Oh, got it.
All right,
Great.
cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here and giving me the opportunity to do this. And I think mine would have been Rob Bass. I want to rock right now. So anyhow, I want to talk to you a little bit about my dissertation research that I recently completed last year, and it deals with assessing our TPD course here at Southeastern. I actually kind of converted our weekly lab meetings to this course over the last 20 years or so. And it's a mandatory course that is in sequence from fall to spring. It builds on itself. And TA's Rock actually means something. It's not a cool title, but it actually refers to what we do every week. And that is we come in, reflect on our teaching experience. Then they have an opportunity to watch me model research-based practices and teaching each lab. And then we sit and collaborate and discuss some teaching approaches that may work best for that lesson. And then we decide whether to keep it or not, what to keep in our teaching approach as we move forward every week. Did that screen shift for you guys pretty good? Okay, great. So we know that teaching professional development is necessary. It's beneficial. What I'm mostly concerned with and interested in is which components of the course is going to impact our teaching self-efficacy and teaching these biology labs. The quality components are those that are in the literature that's necessary for providing quality TPD. My design was simply a mixed methods case study, and I used a small quantitative piece. I used the teaching self-efficacy survey to measure how confident TAs are in accomplishing certain teaching tasks. I actually designed a similar survey called a component survey that actually measures which components help them become more confident in their teaching. They're both 5-point Likert scales, and they're both like 18 items. But my larger piece was a qualitative interview, and I had that audio recorded and then did a code analysis on it to obtain those data. My participants are master's level biology TAs. We have a kind of a small program here at Southeastern, only bringing about 5 or 6 TAs a year. And all the participants volunteered, and they were teaching our biology lab. So the experienced TAs had previously gone through the 1-year TPD course and completed that, and they were still teaching my labs. New TAs had just come in the fall and had just completed 1 semester. I started this in the spring of 23 for my dissertation research. I used the survey results to help me do something similar to what Dr. Cody Smith did, and that is break the sample size up into high and low teaching self-efficacy. So I purposefully selected a smaller sample for the qualitative interviews. My conceptual framework's based on Dr. Reeves' 2016 model of TPD and Bandura's social cognitive theory, which supports the idea of having GTA teaching self-efficacy as a target. That's not a Captain America shield, it's a target, okay? So at any rate, all these crazy errors, that's coming from Bandura's social cognitive theory, and that all these things can interact and influence teaching self-efficacy and vice versa. The first question I want to talk about with you guys is, how does my use of situational leadership to deliver training impact teaching self-efficacy of the TAs? Situational leadership, just to briefly go over it, it's a fluid approach to leadership. It starts out with more directing leadership, which is very detailed instruction, and moves to more coaching and supporting, and then finally delegating, where you can turn loose the TAs to do their own thing. But this is all based upon their development level and the situation that they're dealing with. So you can see here, maybe if you see my pointer, this is not something that is static. This is something that's very fluid and moves around depending on the development of the TAs and the situation. My second question deals with which components of my training would serve as sources of self-efficacy to these TAs. And this is something maybe a little more familiar to everybody in terms of Bandura's sources of self-efficacy. And this is just what can help build their self-efficacy and their confidence. Well, Bandura said, well, they can have personal experiences, success and failures that build mastery experiences, or they can learn from someone else's, observing them do it. They can learn also and gain confidence from feedback from someone if anything doesn't else work. All this feeds into their physiological aspects in terms of if they're confident rather than being anxious, they tend to be more productive. So we're going to talk about these a little bit inside of the situational leadership codes as I go through these data. So my first code being directing leadership. This deals with, as I said, giving detailed instruction and giving the TAs our expectations, what we expect out of them. I found that the best way to do this, one of the best ways to do this, is modeling the research-based practices for them that I expect them to use. This was rated as the top component of my training of perfect 5.0, no standard deviation. And because the TA said, well, this gives us a clear picture of what you want, it helps us see exactly how the lab's laid out and how you have successfully taught it for years. But then I said, well, why don't you go watch someone else besides myself, go watch another TA teach. And they said, well, that really helped us a lot, because then we know you can teach it because you've done it for years. But then I see somebody else on my level do it, and I'm like, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. So peer observation was really important in building their confidence. And finally, integrating the PD into weekly meetings was huge, because they had the opportunity to practice the labs with each other every week, kind of practice teaching and start building some experience for themselves, because they came in with very little or no experience. So at this point, TAs really need and appreciate that directive leadership. It shows them what we expect from them in teaching the labs, and it provides them not only the content they need to know to teach the biology labs, but also the context, like what pedagogy to use for every lesson. The sources, as I mentioned, the sources of self-efficacy that I tie to this leadership, I think, are vicarious experiences, because they're learning watching me and they're learning by watching others. And so they feel confident that they can go in and teach this lab themselves, right? Also, I believe they start building mastery experiences because they come in raw with no experience. And we start teaching them right off the bat, and they have to be able to teach that very next week. So practicing the labs the week before having to go teach them was really big in building their confidence. The coaching leadership style is more of creating a discussion-based type of leadership, being open to their input. So TA said, as I coached them and was able to really make my leadership or my training specialized for each individual, personalized, that's the word I was looking for. These guys felt that really helped them a lot in terms of feeling like they were getting special attention and getting exactly what they needed to teach the labs the way they saw it was best. Giving these TAs feedback was really important. But then the biggest thing that emerged that rings in my ears from the previous talks we've heard today is them having a voice, being able to collaborate with me, not just get direction from me, but be able to collaborate with me, give me their ideas, and work together to form some interesting teaching approaches for each lesson. That really was a high ranking component of our training. So making the training more discussion based to where the TAs are involved, they have a voice, they feel some ownership in this and personalization really gets them fired up about wanting to teach rather than just it's a job, you know. The sources of self-efficacy then here, I found would be more verbal persuasions. And since they look at me as being the leader, they're like, well, you've been teaching us for years and years. So when I tell them, hey, you're doing a great job, they really appreciate that. So verbal persuasions, giving them feedback like that and encouragement really boosted their confidence. And then vicarious experiences, of course, learning not just from me now, but also learning from one another because we had these roundtable discussions as we've read in the previous literature is very powerful for them. Supporting leadership is more about kind of what we heard in previous talks about building autonomy or realizing autonomy. And this requires us to encourage them to use previous experiences, going back and looking at some of their background and saying, hey, you know, what is it that you can tap into to build credibility with your students? I find this is really important for our international students, people who live, like I have a young lady from South Africa right now, and I said, you have stuff that lives in your backyard that no one else around here has ever seen. So you can talk about cool stuff that no one else really knows about. I said, you know, build your credibility that way and exciting these students, turning them on to biology, showing them why you're excited about biology. So that's what supporting leadership's all about. It's more drawing away from what we really want and all the instruction, and then trying to push them forward, lift them up. So having some kind of way of providing them to build their autonomy and build confidence in knowing that they can do this with their background it was really important. And I put up here LC, referring to lab coordinator. They want autonomy. I think Beth mentioned this in one of the chats earlier. They want autonomy. They don't realize that they actually have a lot of autonomy. But they want a lifeline back to me. They want to be free, but they want a lifeline back to me for feedback, you know, and for support. All the TAs said that giving them that autonomy or making them realize they have that autonomy made them feel like a colleague rather than a helper. And that was huge to them. Again, giving them some value really, really set them on fire about teaching. And then finally, being able to think critically from their own mastery experiences. That is, one TA that had a lot of experience, been teaching for me for almost 2 years, he said, I can't build any real valuable experiences from just your advice. You know, I have to see it for myself, do it for myself. I have to be able to think critically from my own experiences. I can't really do it well from someone else's. And then finally, they said teaching multiple times a semester, teaching multiple sections a semester really reinforced their mastery experiences to help them become more confident. It was one of the biggest and most powerful sources of self-efficacy for them. So structured autonomy, not rigid instruction, was really powerful in improving their confidence. And then, as I said, providing them ownership and value through this supportive leadership was really impactful to them. And again, like I said, I already mentioned the sources of self-efficacy here is really clear. Building lots of mastery experiences through supporting and creating more opportunities for making them realize they can be autonomous with good TPD, right? This last piece here is delegating leadership. This is where you really remove your hands off of them a lot here, and you don't give them very much directive leadership. You don't give them very much support. You're really just facilitating and not interrupting unnecessarily. What I found is that only the most experienced TAs with higher teaching self-efficacy really wanted this and really bought into it. One particular new TA with low self-efficacy said they felt ready to do it, but they'd only had 1 year, 1 semester of experience, and they were more teacher-centered and worried about what students thought about them rather than being student-focused. Um, so the experienced TA really showed that they had become more student-centered and research-based in their approach when they were trusted with full autonomy, and it gave them a giant boost in their confidence to know that the department and I trusted them to go teach on their own. So from this, as well as our supporting results, 2 semesters of training seems to be really important here. You're not just one and done. You just don't have enough experience to become more student-centered and use research-based practices confidently with just 1 semester of training. And so the sources of self-efficacy here really revolve around physiological states. I really could have put physiological states out there on every slide, but just not to clutter things up. But honestly, all of the vicarious experiences, mastery experiences, and verbal persuasions feed into them becoming more confident. And the more confident they are, the more productive they are. So physiological states are kind of there for everything. Is that an end or is that a 2 minute warning?
Just a warning. You got plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Okay, thanks. So here's a quick snapshot of what we've been talking about for you guys. Maybe you thought about me using situational leadership to deliver my teaching professional development course as kind of a longitudinal thing over the 2 semester course. But that is true as the TAs continue to develop. But really, you do this every time you step in a classroom. You really are pivoting and adapting to your students every time you teach. And so this is kind of what I do as a snapshot every week. I start directing by modeling research-based practices. They can gain vicarious experiences through watching me teach and then asking questions, of course. And then I start coaching. I walk around to each group of students and I start watching how they're practicing each lesson and teaching the lesson to one another and giving them feedback. And that helps them develop some of their first mastery experiences as they practice this each week in the lab meetings. I continue to coach them by allowing us to take time to have collaborative discussions, to have a safe place to really talk about what bothers them or what excites them about teaching. And so that really builds verbal persuasions and encouragement for them. And then finally, you have to take your hands off because they're fixing to go teach on Monday or on Tuesday. And they're going in that lab by themselves, maybe with a mentor, but the mentor just sits like a fly on the wall. And so they start building true mastery experiences for themselves that next week. So like I said, this is kind of a snapshot of situational leadership in helping us deliver professional development, not just throughout the whole course, but even in one lesson. So my overall conclusions about bringing it back to TA's rock. Situational leadership, I believe, is an effective delivery method to deliver teaching professional development and provide sources of self-efficacy for our TAs. It shows, again, like I said, it's not just for the longitudinal development of the TAs, but also just every lesson we can pivot and adapt to give the TAs what they need at that moment and teach them in context what they need to know that day. So we're teaching the content of biology for that lesson. And then we're also teaching them the pedagogy that works best for teaching that lesson. So I believe integrating weekly meetings with TPD is really, really effective. Also, as I said, the lab coordinator, that is myself, the LC, the lab coordinator modeling teaching gives them a reliable resource to trust in, to lean on as to what works best and how they can maybe mimic that and build on as a foundation. And finally, like I said, collaborative discussions are key. This was nowhere on my radar, as I mentioned to Beth yesterday. Building autonomy wasn't on my radar, and it actually is huge to these TAs. It's super valuable to them to know that they've got a voice, that they have a say, and they can actually help the labs become better, which they have. Over all these years, my labs and my TPD course has become more and more specific and better based on their input. And finally, we have got to provide an opportunity for TAs to regularly implement what we're teaching them, or else it just doesn't stick. They've got to be able to actually put their thoughts, their ideas to work to develop good mastery experiences. Thank you guys for giving me the time and being patient with me. I sure appreciate it. My QR code is there to get to this giant dissertation I did. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions. There's my contact information. I could not have done this without you guys' support. I was blessed to find you guys 6 or 7 years ago. I'd have never finished this without the good Lord's help and without BioTAP. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for a great talk. We see Beth has a question, I believe.
I'm
Hi,
now
Beth.
going to make my mantra in life the good Lord and BioTAP because that just makes me laugh.
How do you like that?
It's gonna be like our tagline. So, and I put into the chat when you were talking about this, I like words you were using was like pinging on a framework that I was trying to use when I was faculty senate president, which was about community and about building community across faculty and about the different components. And I used this paper, Macmillan and Chavis, to talk about things like sense of belonging, mattering, like that your voice matters and that people listen to it and that they then fulfill the needs that you are articulating that you need and the emotional connection that you have within that community. And it made me think, and this is less of a question and more of a comment, sorry, good Lord and BioTAP and all that, is that it seemed to me that what you've designed is a really, and congrats to you that your conceptual framework is beautiful, is a beautiful conceptual framework that is a wonderful curriculum, but that almost encircling all of that, to me, was this sense of belonging that without that wouldn't have made it work, right? I think that's a credit to you, but I think what you've done is you've built this community that also went along with that curriculum.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you've thought about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I appreciate that. Thank you, Beth. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it really is. It becomes a family. You know, as well as I do, I hate seeing them go after 2 years. You know, they become kind of like your kids almost. So yeah, I think that's important. I don't know how to measure that, but building trust with these students is tremendous. Because I think something that's kind of intangible is teaching them how to perceive people and respect people and be humble enough to be taught by students. It's one of the things I tell them all the time is, you know, if you're not humble enough to learn from your students, you have no business teaching. So that is, yes, true. Appreciate that, Beth. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Any other questions from folks or comments?
Yeah, I have a quick question, Frank. If you were to make a recommendation for somebody starting out in a role where they are overseeing TAs, what is the first thing? Because this is, obviously a lot. This is years of development and it's, so well thought out. But if you were taking on a new job and, and you're thrown into a team that already exists, labs that already exist, what's the priority on, like in that first semester for a practitioner?
I kind of think what Beth just said is building community. Because if they don't see that you care and that you're genuine, then all of the other stuff is just fluff. You know, I think that's what the students see in me, my undergraduates and my graduate students, is as they see that I care, and then all the technical stuff kind of falls into place. You know, you got to show some love in order to really get people's respect. Because we talked about this yesterday. They come into the with all kinds of ideas. You know, some people are like, I know everything, I don't need anything. Some people are like scared to death and all these different attitudes. And so that just kind of needs to be calmed down to show that, hey, man, I'm here for you. Um, and then we can get started. That's what I like pre-semester workshops for, is kind of just getting to know one another, seeing where he's at, build some kind of culture, if you will, to let them know it's okay to care about teaching. It doesn't matter what you hear outside of this classroom. It's okay to care about teaching. And I'll have to be honest, I'm blessed. I have a great graduate faculty that supports me. And without graduate faculty support, you're not going to go anywhere. You've got to have grad faculty with support in your department. That's what really makes things click. But yeah, I think that's number one. But we could talk about all kinds of other, technical stuff. Sure, I'd love to chat for sure.